remind you that Scripture tells us that blessed are the peacemakers. I want to underscore the word makers. And it takes a lot of doing to make peace. It takes a good deal of hard work, building like a mighty cathedral, stone by stone, block by block.
And I sometimes wonder why we Americans enjoy punishing ourselves so much with our own criticism. This is a pretty good land. I'm not saying you never had it so good, but that is a fact, isn't it?
I think the most significant aspect has been the suppression of political activity, who forced the people to go underground and to understand politics only as revolutionary struggle and not on a political struggle. In other words, you can only have a chance to change the regime only by revolution and not by an electoral process or a democratic process.
One of the most important things concerning Ho Chi Minh is the fact that he spent so long years out of his country, and that nevertheless he has the touch and feel of the peasantry of his country, of the village. For village life in Vietnam is the essential of the life of the nation. And I will just give you one anecdote to show you that connection. When he, for the first time, gave a press conference in Hanoi in 1945, when he came for the first time as a leader of his nation in front of the public, he said to the people there, "I can't tell you what you have to do, but I can show it to you." Put his thumb on the table and said, "If everywhere where you put your thumb on the sacred earth of Vietnam, there is a plant growing, then we will succeed. If not, not." Now this is again one of the points where Ho, on one hand, is a Marxist economist who knows the importance of the basic production, and on the other hand, a Confucian scholar, because what you have to have in mind to understand that idea of the thumb on the earth is a simple Chinese proverb. A thumb square of planting rice is more precious than a thumb square of gold.
We are now in a very interesting place about Ho Chi Minh, because in this place, which is now a locksmith, a key maker, was 14 years ago, the place where he founded and edited the Paria, the first newspaper he edited. And in this very place, the life of Ho Chi Minh changed, in my opinion, where Ho Chi Minh, who came in 1917 in Paris as a peasant, an Asian peasant, became really a revolutionary and an internationalist. He was born in a poor and little village at Kim Lien, near Vinh, a now destroyed city of Center Vietnam. He was the son of a very poor man, but a man who was a Mandarin, a literated man. And this man was condemned by the French because his nationalism and all the life of Ho Chi Minh was directed by this very injustice of made to his father by the French colonizers. In this family, they were nationalists since the very beginning. He left Vietnam, went on a boat, landed at New York, at London, at Le Havre, and after that in Paris, where he became first a socialist, after that a communist.
I went on over to the White House, and it came back with the very tight round hand of Franklin Roosevelt. I want no French returned to Indochina. FDR. And I remember the excitement I felt that this was probably the first clear U.S. policy toward a Southeast Asian state.
Now, the thing that I think we fail to recognize is that Ho Chi Minh, communist or whatnot, is considered by the people of Vietnam, and I'm speaking now of millions in South Vietnam, as the George Washington of his country. He's the man that they think threw off the French, the colonialism. Just as we had our 1776, they had theirs in the 1940s. He also led an underground movement against the Japanese who had occupied Vietnam and the whole Indochina Peninsula during World War II. And whether we like him or not, whether we like the particular economic system or social system that he might develop or not, we must remember that he is indeed considered by many, the peasants, the small people, the little people in South Vietnam and North Vietnam, as the George Washington of his country.
General Gracie was the principal British officer responsible for accepting the surrender of the Japanese in French Indochina south of the 16th parallel. And that was his mission. But after he arrived in Saigon with his troops, he found that the French were without means of maintaining law and order. And so he, as I understand it and as I recall it, he took the weapons that he derived from the Japanese and turned them over to French military officers and men. But if this had not been done, in all probability, the French could not have recaptured their control at Saigon.
I met Ho Chi Minh for the first time in Hanoi at the end of 45, sent there by d'Argentlieu, Admiral d'Argentlieu, or High Commissioner, sent by de Gaulle in Saigon, wanted me to contact the Viet Minh leader for the first time. I said to him, I am sent to you by the High Commissioner in the name of General de Gaulle to tell you that we want Vietnam to join us in the French Union. Looked at me and he said, the French Union? What's that? Is it a circle or is it a square? That was a test, because there is a Chinese proverb, a lot of Chinese proverbs, which identify heaven and intelligence with the circle and earth and solidity with the square. Is it an idea or is it a fact? Is it somewhere? And so I answered, and I think that it's one of the occasions when Ho Chi Minh has been just a little surprised. I answered, I don't know. He said, but what are you doing here? I said, I come to ask you, because we have to build it together.
Towards the end of November of 1946, when the admiral commanding the French fleet in the Bay of Tonkin, in his words, decided to teach the Vietnamese government a hard lesson, and the fleet stood off of Hai Phong and shelled the city until between 6,000 and 10,000 were killed.
He said, I have no army. It's not true now. I have no army, 1945. I have no finance. I have no diplomacy. I have no public instruction. I have just hatred. And I will not disarm it until you give me confidence in you. Now this is the thing on which I would insist, because it's still alive in his memory as in mine. For every time Ho Chi Minh has trusted us, we betrayed him.
Here you had a country which was not really just divided at the 17th parallel. You had fought the Indochina War, and all the best and most talented Vietnamese of a generation had faced in 1946 and 1947 the alternative of the French or the Viet Minh. The best of a generation, the kind of young men who would, join up the day after Pearl Harbor in this country. It was going to, are you going to fight to kick out the French, or are you going to, be a French puppet? So the most talented people of the generation all signed up, and the Viet Minh won this war, and it was an enormously popular national war. And at the end of it, they came up with a dynamic society which had won a war, which was tested, which was tough, which had brought up to the top the very best of a generation.
Well, there are some similarities between the French effort in the Indochina War in Vietnam and the Americans. The Americans are just so much more powerful than the French were. They have so much more artillery, they have so much more air power, they have so many more men, they have so much more wealth than the French ever had, so that there are not going to be any Dien Bien Phu's in the American presence there.
In Washington, the U.S. Secretary of Defense...
The equipment which we have sent to Indochina is highly technical, so we are sending technicians as a temporary training force. We are sending planes, but no pilots. We are not sending combat troops.
We have seen no reason for the abandonment of the so-called Navarre Plan. That plan, as you may recall, broadly speaking, was a 2-year plan and contemplated a very substantial buildup of local forces and their training and equipment.
The French moved into Dien Bien Phu in 1953. In January of 1953, Parachute Battalion came into the area, and the idea was there were two aspects of it. One, to control a piece of ground, and then to prevent the Viet Minh from sweeping on into Laos.
I do not expect that there is going to be a communist victory in Indochina. By that I don't mean that there may not be local affairs where one side or the other will win victories. But in terms of a communist domination of Indochina, that I do not accept as a probability.
The French generals did not believe that artillery could be brought to bear in sufficient quantity. So correspondingly, they were not active in their patrolling outside of the particular perimeter. The feature was to keep the focus on the area, not to cause the quick rush of the battle position, but to build the particular battle position.
The French miscalculated, as I think did we, in the degree of sophistication of the weaponry that was deployed on the high ground. They didn't think they could get these pieces up there, but they did somehow.
The Battle of Dien Bien Phu is a significant phenomenon in military history, and from all of the standpoints that one views war, it achieved a particular political objective in the full Clausewitzian sense of the term. It represented a tremendous logistical
effort on the part of the North Vietnamese, or of General Giap, to move the artillery pieces, which changed the balance of this particular battle significantly.
Forces of aggression seem to be concentrating just at one point, at Dien Bien Phu, where the resistance is extremely gallant against overwhelming odds.
The French began the war as a colonial war. They try many times to change this very nature of the war, trying to change it in a civil war, a war between the right and the left in Vietnam, and after that in international war, a crusade against communism.
It was clear that the French were in deep trouble at Dien Bien Phu. And then Admiral Radford thought that if we went in with air, we could knock them out.
Senator Morton, as you know from my letter to you, we are very interested in a meeting that was called by Mr. Secretary Dulles and Admiral Radford, in which you played a part, and in which 8 members of the Congress of the United States were present, 5 senators and 2 representatives. I wonder if you could give us your best recollection of who was at that meeting.
Senator Morton, sound 1, take 1.
There was a meeting. I've forgotten the exact date. This can be easily ascertained. I assume that the records have been kept. The burden of it was Admiral Radford's feeling that we should really move in and bring active support to the French, specifically air support from carriers. Carriers were available in the nearby area. How many missions could have been mounted, I don't know. I didn't get into the military details. And it was felt that the artillery that they had on the high ground could be destroyed by air attack.
And they failed always, because they were always seen by the Vietnamese as a foreign power trying to get back his colonial power. That is why they lost the war at Dien Bien Phu.
Dien Bien Phu has fallen. I join with you in paying tribute to the gallant defenders. May it